Good morning, everyone. If we haven't met before, my name is Ben Wilkes. I'm the program manager at the TomTom Foundation. And on behalf of our board and our team, I just want to thank each of you for being with us here today. This morning's event is part of a final week of programs at the Cities Rising Summit titled The Small City Moment. This week, we will focus on ideas and solutions for small and mid-sized cities across America, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's event and this entire week of programs is brought to you by our partners at Apex Clean Energy, whom we thank for their incredible support and collaboration throughout the process. The Cities Rising Summit has been made possible as well by community members like you. So this is your last chance to donate directly to the initiative. We'd encourage you to do so today at our website, tomtomfoundation.org/give. During this morning's panel, we will hear from Virginia universities leading the way in the transition to clean energy. We're excited to be here to learn more about the strategies they are employing and the ways that community members can get involved. This session is presented in partnership with 2RW Consultants, a Charlottesville-based firm that delivers innovative and efficient facilities systems and comprehensive energy consulting services to reduce the total cost of ownership, improve occupant comfort and safety, and tread lightly on our planet. I would now like to turn things over to our moderator, Eric Haug. Eric is the Vice President of Business Development at Apex Clean Energy. Eric has successfully built relationships with dozens of leading corporations, universities, and cities, resulting in the execution of more than 2 gigawatts of power purchase agreements to support commercialization of utility scale wind and solar projects. Eric, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, thanks, Ben. Happy to be with you all today. So to everyone who's attending the conference, thank you, and welcome to this panel on the clean energy transition. As Ben indicated earlier, my role at Apex focuses on helping corporations and various institutions purchase renewables from Apex's wind and solar projects under development. So I'm particularly excited to be able to moderate this panel with 2 of Virginia's leading institutions of higher ed. Colleges and universities are often leaders in furthering systemic change in a number of different ways. And so the transition to clean energy is no different. Today, we're going to be speaking to the College of William & Mary and the University of Virginia as they seek to develop and implement new strategies and maximize your ability to conserve energy, be more efficient, and purchase clean power from the grid. So I'll introduce our 2 panelists and then ask them to share a little bit about their programs and roles. So Andrea Rudy Trimble is the Sustainability Director at the University of Virginia and has been a leader in the higher ed sustainability initiatives for 15 years. Andrea's work focuses on interconnectedness of operations, curriculum, research, and engagement, and the potential to accelerate solutions to pressing issues through collaboration and replicable models. Prior to joining UVA in 2014, Andrea managed Harvard University's Sustainable Building Program, taught university classes in design and sustainability, and worked in architecture, historic preservation, as she's now sitting on the mall, and sustainability consulting. Andrea holds a Bachelor of Architecture from Virginia Tech and a Master of Liberal Arts in Sustainability and Environmental Management from the Harvard Extension School, and a Master of Science in Historic Preservation from Columbia University. Welcome, Andrea. Next up on our panel is Calandra Waters-Lake. She's the Director of Sustainability at the College of William & Mary. She's responsible for connecting and empowering others, fostering long-term and inclusive thinking about the environmental, social, and economic impacts of university decisions. She collaborates with students, faculty, and staff across all departments and schools on policies, programs, and initiatives. Calandra manages both the Students' Green Fee, funding sustainability grants, and the Green to Gold Revolving Fund, which is part of the $1 Billion Green Challenge. As adjunct faculty in the Environmental Science and Policy program, she also leads a sustainability reading and projects course. She's facilitated the creation of the university's sustainability plan, and Calandra holds a Bachelor of Science from Virginia Tech, as well as a Master of Arts in Education from William & Mary. Welcome, Calandra. So I mentioned both of your positions in these introductions, but it would be great to hear a little bit more detail about each of your roles as they relate to your specific universities. So I'm going to share the screen and have you just talk through, starting with Andrea, some of the activities and goals of your school.
Thank you, Eric. I'm really excited to be here and excited for the conversation. As Eric mentioned, I'm the director of the UVA's Office for Sustainability. I lead a team of full-time staff, student employees, and volunteers. We focus on pan-university strategic planning and partnerships, program and project implementation across various impact areas, and lots of engagement and communication with students, staff, faculty, and alumni. We run or we partner on programs such as our Delta Force Energy Efficiency Program, Green Building Standards for Capital Projects, Green Workplace, Smart Labs, Green Living, and many, many more. Our climate action and sustainability approach is framed around 3 themes: engage, steward, and discover. So how we engage our community, how we steward our resources, how we focus on sustainability in curriculum, research, and hands-on experimental learning. And we look to integrate all of these things into one comprehensive plan and approach for sustainability and climate. Our first climate goal was a 25% reduction below 2009 levels by 2025. We met this past calendar year in 2019, 6 years early, in large part because of a 32 megawatt utility scale solar set of projects, district energy improvements, as well as energy efficiency in our buildings. We're very excited, just launched a new 2030 sustainability plan this past Monday, a week ago, which includes 10 bold goals. These steward and engage goals were approved by the Board of Visitors last December, and then our discover goals around teaching and research were approved by a provost just recently to make one big plan. And the steward and engage goals include being carbon neutral by 2030, which we'll talk a lot about today, and being fossil fuel free by 2050. Eric, next slide, please. And we're a fairly large institution. We have over 550 buildings across 16 million square feet, over 20,000 students, 17,000 faculty and academic staff. We have a major health system, UVA Health, which is included in all of our goals, and we're continuing to grow. So accountability is really important, both within our boundaries, taking care of our own house, as well as our impact and collaboration with the community. So we're engaging with strategic planning and implementation on all levels. Sustainability is included in President Ryan's 2030 plan for the university. We have our new 2030 plan that I mentioned, and then now we're starting to work with schools and units on school and unit strategic plans for sustainability, as well as action plans such as climate, food, nitrogen, water, waste, across the academic side as well as the health system side. And with that accountability, we also are really focused on partnerships and collaboration to build replicable models and really accelerate change. So we formed Climate Action together with the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County almost 2 years ago now. And as we each advance our climate action planning and resilience planning, we're really engaged in doing that in a coordinated way. And we'll talk too about this partnership with William & Mary, which we formed last December when we both set carbon neutral by 2030 goals. With that, I'll turn it over to Calandra for her introduction.
Thank you. I too am very excited to be here with Eric and Andrea. So as Eric mentioned, my name is Calandra Waters-Lake, and I'm the Sustainability Director at William & Mary. My office is housed in an area of the university called Strategic Initiatives and Public Affairs, and my job is to empower others on campus to apply a lens of sustainability to what they do. So I work across all areas of the institution through academics, engagement, planning, and operations. And I work a lot with students, faculty, and staff, and really guide the overall vision of the university-wide sustainability direction. As a pretty small office, I spend a lot of my time focused on catalyzing high impact change. Within our university in 2018, our president signed into action her sustainability plan. We approach sustainability very holistically, similar to the United Nations. So our plan includes operational aspects of the university, but also tying what we do to the mission of the university through academics, engagement, and planning. We really try to leverage what a higher education institute is uniquely positioned to do towards a flourishing planet and people. Commitment of this plan was to set a carbon neutrality date and create a climate action plan. This led to our 2030 neutrality goal and our partnership with UVA, which we'll be going into a little bit more later. We're approaching our climate action plan, which we're working on now, in a very similarly holistic way. recognizing that a single institution going carbon neutral is really a drop in the bucket globally, and that we need to use our best sphere of influence to do the most that we can to address climate change. So this means teaching, learning, research, students, that sort of thing. Eric, could you go to the next slide, please? So included in the original sustainability plan in 2018 was also a commitment to explore grid scale power purchase agreements. And as a result, we signed a PPA for 50% roughly of our electricity, and we'll talk more about that later. We also joined the $1 billion Green Challenge, which Eric mentioned a little at the beginning. This is an initiative with the Sustainable Endowment Institute. And as part of this challenge, we've made a commitment to have $1 million in our Green Revolving Fund by 2025. And we think this is going to be a really useful tool. We already have the Green Revolving Fund going right now, but it will be growing significantly. And this tool allows us to provide departmental loans internally to the university for energy saving and greenhouse gas reducing projects that also have cost savings. So that money comes back into the loan and then it goes out again on another project. On the community side, we've partnered quite a bit with Solar United Neighbors. We've sponsored 3 solar co-ops, one of which is open right now in the Hampton Roads area. And we've also hosted their Virginia Solar Congress last year, which had over 200 attendees. If you haven't heard of Solar United Neighbors, they're a nonprofit that helps make solar more affordable and accessible by holding information sessions, ongoing solar, and then walking a now educated cohort of folks through an RFP process and basically getting bulk purchasing rates that usually beat anything a homeowner would get on their own. So those are just a few of the things that we've been doing recently. Back to you, Eric.
Great. Well, thank you both for that. And while I'm adjusting my screen, I'll just say that it's exciting to me on a personal level because I am a resident of Charlottesville and an alum of William & Mary. So very excited to see the different activities that you all are helping to drive forward. As you mentioned, in November of 2019, the college and UVA announced this joint commitment to reach a carbon neutrality goal by 2030, which is it's coming up soon. And so in the next 10 years, I think there's a lot to be done, and I'm sure you're both excited about reaching that goal. So Calandra, how did this agreement come about?
Yeah, so both of our universities were heading towards 2030 carbon neutrality goals. And although healthy competition certainly has its place, really the key to sustainability is collaboration. And fortunately, our presidents agreed with us on that. And after some discussion between the 2 presidents, we had full support to move forward with working together at a university scale on carbon neutrality and climate action. So we're very excited about it.
That's great to hear. And so for the commitments themselves, for each of your schools, what are the actions or the programs that you think are the highest priority to achieving the goal? Maybe starting with Andrea.
Yeah, we're each separately working on our climate action plan to determine, specific to our school, what pathways will get us to where we need to be. But we are collaborating on particular areas, and we'll talk a little bit about the process in a minute. But we've identified between the 2 institutions that major areas of potential collaboration are rooftop solar, potentially PPAs, our fleet programs, and through our transportation departments, and capital projects and the opportunities that come with new construction and growth for reducing carbon. But at UVA specifically, a major area for us is district energy opportunities and energy sourcing. We have this other fossil fuel free by 2050 goal that we need to look at the same time. And that's a big transformational goal that's completely different from where we are now. So we'll really focus on that sourcing piece, as well as a big focus on existing buildings and new construction.
Gotcha. And how about for you, Calandra?
Yeah, so the initial focus of the partnership is really on carbon neutrality, and our largest footprint is electricity, followed by building fuels, and then fleet. So that's sort of what we're prioritizing at the moment. We're aiming for within our university and leveraging that partnership for it to be really useful and strategic, and to focus on impactful ways that the two universities could get things done together that we necessarily couldn't do separately, or it would be a lot slower to do separately. But there's a lot of learning along the way. It's certainly piloting a new way of doing things between the two.
Well, and you mentioned the idea of competition versus collaboration between entities or groups like yourselves. Tell us a little bit about the process of partnering and why working with at least one other university was helpful in setting a goal, Calandra.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time matching up our content experts at a very deep level. We've started with staff, and we're working our way out to faculty and students. Andrea and I have played the roles of facilitators and connectors between the university around sustainability challenges. And this is a little different than some other groups, because we aren't just working between our offices. We're really pulling folks from across our universities, putting them in a room together, and creating the space and opportunity for them to learn from each other and create solutions. So some of the things that we did early on within the group were to, as a group, set criteria for how we would make progress, things like prioritizing transparency and aligning with the universities, real tangible solutions. What would the financial implications be, and is there replicability to other universities? I would say it's been very helpful. COVID has definitely slowed us down a little bit, but we are continuing to pick up speed.
Well, I congratulate you on being able to navigate that, because I'm cognizant that there are always more stakeholders than you think when you enter something like this, and the complexity of merging efforts must be a challenge, but it's exciting that you've been able to overcome that. And it's also not lost on me that the commitment here drives towards a 2050 fossil fuel elimination date for you, Andrea. So how does this commitment help drive the Virginia goal, which has the same date for carbon-free energy by 2050?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different aspects to that. For one, there's thousands of people associated with universities. So when universities set bold, ambitious goals, there's thousands of people that are starting to understand that is something that is valued to the university, and then support comes with that, whether it's classes and research support and events and opportunities to get involved. So we're building a whole network of advocates who can advocate on a policy or personal level and ask for these things from Virginia. But then also on a more implementation-based level, there's a myriad of strategies that we'll need to meet these goals, but increasing renewable energy and being strong advocates for greening the grid is a big part of that. And in aggregate, all these people, these universities, even much beyond just UVA and William and Mary, I hope will help drive that transition from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and it sounds like from each of your experiences, you're focused on both a combination of technologies and having those be on-site at your university and also off-site in local communities around the state or otherwise. What advice would you give to cities, whether they're small cities, big cities, towns, and other higher ed institutions in the state that may benefit from some of your experience? And maybe we'll start with Calandra.
So I'll start pretty broad, I guess. There are a lot of different philosophies to goal setting, none that are specifically bad, just a lot of different ways to approach it. I think, though, when it comes to energy and particularly climate change, fewer of those rules apply. I think we've hit a time when goal setting is really just a recognition of reality. And so we have to do something. We have to figure it out. And if you don't set the goal, you're never going to try. And it's really going to take all of us. So I guess one word of advice would be to be determined. Like, you don't have to be optimistic, you don't have to be pessimistic, but you should be determined. It's going to take perseverance and grit. And then my second word of advice would be, don't go it alone. Addressing climate change will take all of us. Creating goals should be an inclusive process, and recognizing that others inside your organization and outside share your challenges. That doesn't mean you need to create a partnership for no reason. You do need to be strategic. But one of the reasons our partnership is working so well is because we share a common time-sensitive goal. We have a similar direction and some commonalities that make it worthwhile. So those are my two pieces of advice.
And likewise, Andrea, any advice for other cities and universities?
I would echo a lot of the things that Calandra said. I think that balance between really engaging a broad swath of stakeholders is really important, and thinking about this from a regional approach too. So obviously climate isn't just confined to the UVA boundaries, and UVA has a huge impact across the community. So I would say being ambitious is really important, having that time-bound deadline, and then backing that up with accountability and transparency on the data side. And using that data, I think, to help set those ambitious goals is really useful. I've been really impressed with our city and our county and how they have engaged various working groups to really understand what the opportunities are and to hear from people. So it's a long, can be a long process with all the people that need to be involved, but I think getting a stake in the ground for a big time-bound goal is really important.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think now we have a better understanding of process and getting to a goal. And I'd like to shift to the theme of actually making the purchases that move you towards the clean energy transition. So each of your two institutions has taken different approaches so far, and you have different plans for the future. I would like to hear a little bit about how the ways you've purchased renewable energy differ, and what are the advantages that you see from what you've done so far. So maybe starting with Calandra.
So we've made one pretty big leap. I mentioned earlier that our largest carbon contributor is from electricity. So we signed a power purchase agreement for 50% of our electricity on a solar farm in the Williamsburg area. The project has been a little delayed because of COVID, but it's still expected to be completed in 2021. And it's for a 20 megawatt facility, and we'll be the sole off-takers. We are receiving and retiring the original SRECs, and with electricity being our largest contributor, this is really a big step forward for us. And so that was important for us to try and get that underway as quickly as possible.
And so that's a offsite, off-campus solar project that you collaborated with the utility Dominion to actually be able to provide that to your college. Is that correct?
That is correct. So yes, so our facilities management department works directly with Dominion to put this together.
Understood. And Andrea, how have the UVA purchases so far differed from Calandra's experience?
So far we have 3 deliveries of solar at UVA, and we're working on a 4th. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we started with a roof lease from Dominion on 2 of our buildings. Our School of Education building, one of them, and the bookstore building. We wanted at the time to test solar on grounds, and we were approached by Dominion to see if we could house some solar panels for them. So we decided on hosting about 365 kW on 2 of those 2 roofs. And at the time, it was important for us to be able to explore the development process in a sort of a low risk way. We didn't keep the renewable energy attribute, so we don't include this in our greenhouse gas reductions, but it does green the grid to some extent. And then but going forward, we knew that we wanted to be able to keep all those renewable energy attributes in order for it to count in our inventory. But that was a start. And then from there, our next approach was to own and operate panels on rooftops. So we have about 271 kW across 4 buildings, each which happened in very different ways, and that we learned from and that we track through our renewable energy tracker. And then the third, very similar to Calandra, we engaged in utility scale solar power purchase agreements through Dominion. So we have two, 32 megawatts total. We have a 17 megawatt Hollyfield project in King William County, and then we have a 15 megawatt solar facility on 120 acres in Middlesex County. And so in total, that's about 21% of UVA's electricity use. We use a lot. We're a big university. But that took a big chunk out of our carbon footprint for that first goal. And then the last thing, what we're working on right now is rooftop solar PPAs. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we've looked at every single rooftop, identified the ones that are prime candidates, and now we're working through the logistics of making that happen on a rooftop.
Interesting. So that's a combination of both on-site where you own the facility, on-site where you don't own the facility, but you've helped to enable a new project, and then off-site where you're letting the utility kind of operate that on your behalf. And then also working with, I think I heard private development or private developers similar to Apex and others that operate in the community. So that's quite a diversity of approaches. Very interesting. So maybe now we'll move into the stakeholders in the community where these projects are happening and where your colleges are. So how would you say, Calandra, that, how does your university's actions influence Williamsburg or other locations where your solar project is, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the examples is just really leading by example. So being able to show that some of these things are possible. Another is that we have included in our climate action planning committee members from the community, including representatives from the municipalities. And we're really hoping that that having them included in this process and making sure that those open lines of communication are going on back and forth will help us grow a stronger connection with our municipalities as we further figure out exactly what the details of our climate action plan will look like and exactly how we're getting towards carbon neutrality by 2030. And then we've had a lot of success and really enjoyed our collaboration with Solar United Neighbors, and that aligns with our goals, but it also helps us to bring attention to others on how they can go solar through this organization and with their help.
Yeah, I think that's great. Andrea, what do you think are the expected impacts in the local community as you're working towards your goal?
I hope that as we work towards our goal, we'll be able to do so in a way that really carefully centers equity and collaborates with community leaders and those most impacted by climate change in our community. When President Ryan wrote his 2030 plan, he really connected strongly sustainability and community engagement, and that importance of making sure that we are both great and good in the impacts that we have around us and the decisions that we're making. So one example I think that's exciting through our Climate Action Together partnership with the city and the county is working on one example is a tree carbon accounting project that we're working on with municipalities across the nation. And we're looking at what is the carbon impact of adding or removing trees. And we can take that information as a region and connect that to the equity indicators that are related to trees and urban heat island effect. And then ideally, we can use those indicators to have some influence on policy and planning as it relates to climate action and adaptation. So I'm hoping that the impacts will start to recognize what those impacts are a little bit better through this data connection on the equity and climate side, and then also translate that to some good decision making.
Interesting. So you're actually being able to advance your carbon goal by planting trees, but by planting the trees in places where there may be low income housing, you're providing shade, which reduces their electricity bills and helps those folks as well. So that's a really interesting overlap between one action having multiple outcomes. Calandra, what impact or input or feedback have you received from stakeholders locally, so university staff or community members, on the goal and on the actions that you all are taking in the solar space?
So far, it's been overwhelmingly positive. And setting this carbon goal has really, like I said, leapfrogged us forward, along with right after that being able to announce the power purchase agreement for half of our energy was a nice way of showing that we are trying to make good on this as quickly as possible. And then also being able to announce the UVA partnership just shows that we mean business. And the students, the faculty, the staff have all been extremely supportive, extremely engaged. And so I still feel like we're very early on in this process. The partnership is still relatively early on. Our climate action plan, even though we have a carbon neutrality date, the plan itself is still being put together, because it's more than just a carbon neutrality date. It includes a lot of other components within the university. So there's a lot still to be done and built out. And I think it's a really exciting time to be doing it.
My audio is having some issues, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question, because I think you just finished, Calandra.
I did. Did you guys hear me okay?
Yes, it's back now. Thank you. Apologies for the technical issue. Andrea, any feedback that you've gotten from the UVA or the Charlottesville community?
I would say, yeah, definitely positive. Students are amazing at pushing for change and looking for accountability on climate and as well as other issues. So there have been many people, students, alumni, faculty, staff, pushing for UVA to set a carbon neutrality goal. And I know many of them are looking forward to the development of the next climate action plan to look for the action there. And then we received amazing support from our board of visitors and our senior administration leadership when putting forward those goals. They're incredibly supportive, which helps from the top down as well as the bottom up. So having that which approach.
That's great to hear. As a local Charlottesville person, I am also in favor of all of these actions, so thank you. Maybe now we'll shift into another topic, just the energy transition as a whole, and then maybe a little bit of big picture thinking and what you're looking forward to. So how do you see this overall moving from fossil fuels to clean energy? How does that transition affect students in your schools? Do you think that looking back that there were fewer opportunities or more opportunities to be involved in energy and environment? How do you see that changing over time, starting with Calandra?
Well, I would say in the not too distant past that the opportunities to work in energy on the campus have still been there. So we try to build students into every single thing that we do. So all our working groups have students, we have internships, we have research projects. We have instances where students just come to us and they're interested in something, and then we try to make that connection for them so that they can get some experience with the content expert on campus. So students have always been centered at what we're doing, but I think that that the important part of carbon neutrality on a university campus is really making sure it connects to the students. The clean transition will be something they get to help in and experience at their university. And we see ourselves as a test bed in some ways. Like, we gain either way. We want things to be successful, but it's through the experience and the knowledge of our students. They gain from failure and they gain from success, and we can't be afraid of either. So this also gives us some latitude in pushing the boundaries. I also think it'll be part of the growing number of jobs in the future. So not only in things like installation, but all kinds of career paths. So this means more universities will be catering to this kind of interdisciplinary education, one where students might need a more sustainability-minded background, full of environmental, but also economic and social courses.
Yeah, I think the most recent jobs data showed that at least for 2018 or 2019, that wind energy technician was the fastest growing job in the United States. And a lot of those jobs are in rural locations where wind farms can be built. So I think that you're spot on with the economic future for jobs anyway. Andrea, how about for you? What do you think is the effect on your students at UVA?
Yeah, I again want to echo a lot of what Calandra said. I think she's also spot on in the multidisciplinary aspects of it too. So whereas maybe in the past, energy conjured up the ideas of engineering and sort of the more technical side of things, we're also increasingly seeing opportunities in policy and advocacy, even in art and in writing, much more of the environmental energy aspects coming through, and students making connections between the various disciplines, whether it's double majoring or even just incorporating different types of internships and things like that. We have a UVA Career Center person focused on sustainability careers, which is really exciting, and I think indicates how important that's become to students. The fact that the Career Center is now emerging as a way for students to find those jobs by dedicating staff time to that really deliberately. So, and alumni too. So as this grows, I think more and more alumni are getting out there in these fields and are able to connect back as mentors to students. And that sort of exponentially grows the career paths and opportunities for students.
Yeah, that's great. I hadn't considered the alumni effect, but that's kind of an investment that will continue to pay off for you. So I think you mentioned earlier, Andrea, that some of the actions you're doing, for example, planting trees, they do more than just go towards your goal. They have ancillary or secondary benefits to the community in a variety of ways. You know, we think about projects we construct as providing resilience in communities because there's a tax base that will last for the length of the project life. How do you see the energy transition playing, particularly in enhancing the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece of what a lot of sustainability programs are now starting to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we, as a university, we make all kinds of decisions every day, big scale, small scale, smaller, bigger decisions. And all of those have upstream, downstream effects. So I think from a systems perspective, ideally a transition to cleaner energy really centers environmental justice issues and brings awareness to, as individuals or as an institution, what the effects are on people out there, whether it's creating a material that goes into a building or it's living near an energy source that UVA uses. So I think a big piece, I think the energy transition is really intertwined, I think, with our other sustainability initiatives in that thought process. So as we think about carbon reduction, waste, food, nitrogen, and our other goals, it helps us think through that systems lens as to what we are doing and what our impacts are and how we can do better. And I know that clean energy will play a key role in bettering all that.
And same question to you, Calandra. How do you think that the energy transition can enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives?
Yeah, I also echo some of what Andrea has said, and the idea that you know, DEI is really a lens that can be applied to any topic, and rightly so, it should be applied to this one. Just like we are always pushing for people to apply sustainability as a lens to everything that they do, I see DEI as the counterpart to that. It is the same concept. So, and just like I've mentioned, leveraging William & Mary's sphere of influence towards sustainability, I want us to make sure that we're doing the same for DEI. So we've tried to be very inclusive in our planning process, in our working groups across the campus, because we want people to have a seat at the table that help shape the future. But we also recognize that there are other ways of leveraging power through purchasing. So things like our small women and minority owned business goals at the university, and really ensuring that we're pushing those goals forward through procurement in energy and in meeting these carbon neutrality goals, moves those funds into the areas where they're really needed. So so as we sort of narrow in on these solutions for carbon neutrality, we really want to make sure that there's a just solution and that there's a just transition, and So I wouldn't say that I have an exact or a perfect answer, but that we are constantly trying to center it in what we are doing and embed it in what is going on, and apply it to everything that we do.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know that this is a topic of evolving nature, and it's new, and everyone's trying to figure out the best ways to implement this type of thinking into their procurement and other processes. So I applaud the efforts. I'm going to ask one more question to both of you, and then we're going to shift to answer a couple of questions from the chat. So if you are listening in as an attendee, please feel free to drop a question into the chat, and I'll get to them as I can and as time allows. So final question for both of you from me is, looking ahead, what excites you about the energy transition? And we'll start with Calandra.
It's finally happening is what I'm most excited about. I just hope it can happen fast enough. I've never been a big fan of the idea of just like pushing off these solutions to some future generation. That, as excited as I am about how inspiring our students are and how capable I think that the next generation is becoming, it doesn't feel responsible to just say they'll figure it out. And so I'm very excited about being part of the age where we are really starting to make this transition right now and make this action right now with the support of those up and coming behind us.
And on that note, before I hand it back to you, Andrea, what's the biggest barrier for you achieving your goal?
I think, so I'll answer for us at William & Mary, because I think that it's going to vary depending upon your organization. But for us, things are moving so rapidly that it can be hard to keep up. It can be hard to have the capacity to explore all the new options. It can be hard to make sure that you're making the best choice possible and including in your decision as many factors as you possibly can, because in sustainability, we know we try to think very broadly, and as Andrea indicated, think upstream and downstream, but not get stuck in that process, still make choices and move forward and learn along the way. So for us in particular, it's just, trying to keep up with all the changing things out there.
Right. Turbine towers are getting taller, solar panels are getting more efficient, and policy is ever changing. So I completely understand that. Andrea, maybe we can ask the same question in reverse. So what's the biggest barrier to reaching your goal? And then what excites you about this transition?
I think the answer to both is probably the same. I think the potential for transformational change is what's most exciting and is also the biggest barrier. So if we think about our fossil fuel free goal, that looks totally different from where we are right now. And that will require a lot of different thinking beyond the incremental change that we as a whole, not just UVA, are sort of used to. I think the pandemic has shown us that when faced with urgency, transformational change can happen pretty quickly, and people can innovate and pull together really quickly and get things changed. So I think as hopefully the urgency of what we're facing in terms of climate change is elevated even more broadly, then we can start to think systematically about how we change the system. So that's what's exciting, is I think, like Calandra, I think it's happening. Hopefully it'll happen fast enough. And but it is also a barrier in the way we, as a whole, generally tend to think about change.
Got it. Yeah, a lot of the transactions that you've talked about today, we should mention, are very long-term commitments. And that's the way that solar and wind projects are enabled. So again, it takes a long-term view and persistence or determination, as you said, Calandra. So again, I congratulate you both on the ability to set these goals and stay organized and coordinated. And I think as a community, we'll wish you the best of luck in achieving them, and tell us how to help. Tell us what you need as community members and stakeholders in these processes. Okay, I'm going to turn to a couple of questions. I had a few sent to me offline, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. So first question would be, Okay, was Williamsburg or Charlottesville Albemarle part of your decision making on your energy purchases, and if so, how? Maybe we'll start with Andrea for that. I think we're having trouble hearing you, Andrea. Just make sure
sorry.
there we go.
So we haven't specifically partnered with the city or the county on a renewable project, but I think, yeah, the door is open in the future to consider what the opportunities might be. So hopefully in the future.
And Calandra?
Yeah, it's same response as Andrea, basically. So not exactly yet. We knew with our PPA that we wanted it to be as close to our campus as possible. And I think we were very lucky to get it in the Williamsburg area. And we do like that it's, you know, it's creating new jobs and it's within driving distance of the university, so we can connect it to curriculum and research. But would welcome and hope that as we move forward, this first one was kind of like figuring out the nuts and bolts, but as we move forward, that there will be even more collaboration and a more regional approach.
Great. Well, so call to action, all attendees who are representing your cities, reach out to your universities and work together as closely as possible. So second question I have here is, okay, is it better or worse to have an on-site versus an off-site renewable energy project? And I think this probably starts with Andrea, since you have both, but Calandra, I think you've only done the off-site, and so maybe telling us why that was the first step in your path. Andrea?
So when we're asked this question, we tend to say, in the order of operations, we tend to prioritize energy efficiency first, then on-site solar, then off-site solar. But that said, it's all good. The benefit of on-site, even though it isn't remotely the same scale, isn't possible, is the visibility for students, the access for tours and learning. We do lots and lots of K through 12, as well as college and community tours of the panels that we have on ground, and that's huge and can't be quantified. The off-site solar, if we can fit 3 to 4 megawatts on our rooftops, off-site solar, right now we have 32 megawatts. It's not even close, and it's a tiny, tiny drop in our greenhouse gas footprint on site. But we can't measure all that impact of people being able to see, to your question earlier about opportunities for students and how this could grow. We can't measure what students, or even the K through 12 students, are seeing and going back and doing in the future. So it's really exciting for us to have on-site, but we're doing both.
Right. And Calandra, why off-site?
Well, I'll rewind a second on Andrea's answer, because I agree. I mean, first jump is energy efficiencies, and we've, like many places, been working on energy efficiencies for a long time, and have almost a whole position dedicated to just finding those things on campus. Similarly, looking at our overall footprint, with the largest carbon contributor being electricity, we were looking for something that would help us make the leap in addressing that. And just like Andrea explained, we could plaster solar all over our campus, which we'd never be able to put it all over everything, given our historic nature, but it would never come close to meeting what we need in total. So the large offsite location was needed in order to really make a large leap on our overall footprint. But at the same time, while we were exploring that power purchase agreement, we've been exploring on-site as well. It just happened to be that the power purchase agreement fell into place before the on-site did. And so we've got a couple of projects in the pipeline right now for on-site solar. And I think just like addressing climate change is more like silver buckshot than a silver bullet. A mix is the best way to do this, particularly given the teaching, learning, research nature of the university. So just like Andrea was alluding to, although we won't be able to address all of our electricity with on-site solar, we see it as key. We need on-site solar because we need the students to be able to see it. We need the people to be able to interact with it. We can hopefully put a decent amount on the campus. Like, it's still something integral to our overall plan moving forward. But being able to really match up those resources is, we think, the best approach.
Right. So I hear from you both. Everything is on the table, and a diversity of projects is probably helps you as well to diversify how you're accessing this market. You don't want to put all of your eggs into one single basket forever. So that's really interesting. Let's see, I've got one more question here, and then I think I'm gonna send it back to Ben on the TomTom side. So last question here is really kind of leading in, Calandra, from your last answer. It's how can students get involved in supporting your carbon goal?
Well, since our climate action plan is still being formulated, we have lots of opportunities for students to participate at a lot of different scales. So we have students who spend a number of hours working very close with faculty and staff in working groups focused on particular parts of the climate action plan. It's been, again, a little delayed because of everything else that's been going on, but we'll be opening up the draft goals to the campus for feedback, because we want to make sure that we're getting input from everyone, including those that don't feel, interested in diving deeply into a working group, but we still want their ideas and their reflections on how we're doing with the climate action plan. And then, students might not think that that they could have a lot of influence on where energy comes from to their campus, but really they have a lot of sway. They have a lot of sway as they unite their voices, but they also have a lot of sway inside and outside of a university in their ability to vote, their ability to organize, and their ability to make decisions on an everyday basis. So I think that there are lots of ways that students can participate, and we try to meet people where they're at and recognize that you don't have to have sustainability or energy as your #1 priority in order to participate in these things. They're all connected, and so if we can do our job correctly, then we will show how they're connected and make this easier on them.
And that makes a lot of sense. I'm really encouraged by that answer, Calandra. Andrea, I have the same question for you. What can students and local community members do over, let's say, the next year? And then a follow-up question from Elizabeth Holmes from NBC 29, which is, can you speak to how UVA's climate action measures have helped reduce the university's climate footprint or carbon footprint? And do you have any numbers that you could share with us as well?
Sure. On the engagement side of things, what we really focus on is lots and lots of opportunities to increase awareness and then look for ways to translate that awareness into action, whether it's here or beyond. So there's hundreds of opportunities related to events, internships, working groups, volunteer opportunities, classes, research, and lots of ways to learn and advocate for carbon. And that helps us, whether it's quantifiably or just more globally beyond UVA. So I always tell students to follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, and that's a little tiny starting point of finding out about all these opportunities. And yeah, in terms of quantifiable numbers, the best place for a lot of detail on that for our carbon footprint is we do an annual greenhouse gas inventory. So at sustainability.virginia.edu, we have a whole report on our numbers, progress over time, how we got there. But I would be happy to answer any follow-up questions offline if beyond that, if that would be helpful. Great.
Well, once again, thank you both very much for giving us some of your time this morning. I think that I've certainly learned a lot, and again, I'm very encouraged with the path that both of these schools are on, and I'm looking forward to JMU, Virginia Tech, and all the rest of the Virginia schools to likewise follow your lead or take additional steps. So for now, thanks again, and I'll give it back to Ben from TomTom.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Andrea and Calandra, for sharing your insights and expertise so openly with us this morning. This was a great conversation, and we'd just like to thank everyone who attended today for being a part of it and who's watching on YouTube after the fact. This event is part of our final week of programs at the Cities Rising Summit and is brought to you by Apex Clean Energy and 2RW Consultants. All Cities Rising events are pay what you can, thanks to our sponsors and the support of community members like you. So if you're compelled or inspired or intrigued by today's program and what our panelists have shared, we invite you to become a contributing member to the foundation. So with that, thank you, speakers, so much for being here, and thank you everyone for being with us.